Welcome to the Friday Show, presented by Woodbine. I'm Polo Report Bloodstock editor Joe Nevills, joined today by editor-in-chief Natalie Voss and Bally's Arapahoe Park announcer Jonathan Horowitz to discuss the upcoming retired racehorse project Thoroughbred Makeover. But first, let's talk about a big weekend at Woodbine. This Sunday is the $500,000 Breeders' Stakes, the final leg of the Canadian Triple Crown, and we just might have a banger on our hands here. Prince of Wales Stakes winner Duke of Love is confirmed for the Breeders' Stakes, and he'll be joined by Queen's Plate second and third place finishers Hall of Dreams and Sir for Sure. They're going 1.5 miles on the turf, so we're really going to see what these horses are made of on Sunday. First post is at 1:10 p.m. Eastern. Today we'll be talking about the Thoroughbred Makeover, which is an event both of you are familiar with, Jonathan as an announcer for the event and a content creator, and Natalie as a former participant last year in the Dressage. First off, Natalie, for the people that are watching that aren't familiar with the event, can you give us a quick rundown, and then we'll go over each event in the makeover and discuss what kind of skill set a horse needs to succeed?
Yeah, so the Thoroughbred Makeover is designed to showcase what horses in their first year or so off the track can do. It's sort of like the Triple Crown. You can only do it once. Your horse is only eligible for a limited amount of time after they leave their racing career. And there are several different sports that you can participate in because they recognize that people do a lot of different things with off-track thoroughbreds. So the makeover kind of brings everybody together at the end of roughly 1 year of training in their new chosen sport. And the horses compete against others doing the same sport. And then there's a finale round where the top 5 from each sport compete sort of within and then against each other to choose an overall winner. And the idea is to sort of choose a horse who seems like they're the best example of how much a thoroughbred can do with a limited amount of time acclimating to something new. So it's a training challenge, it's a competitive challenge, but mostly it's sort of in many ways a showcase to just sort of show off what these horses, how flexible these horses are as far as what they can excel at.
So looking forward to this year's event in particular, Jonathan, what are you most excited about? What's really got you excited to look at this year's makeover?
It's seeing the new crop of makeover eligible horses that we've seen on the track relatively recently, and how quickly, because of the foundation they've gotten on the track, can use those skill sets, their athleticism and what they've learned to come to one of the greatest show venues in the world, the Kentucky Horse Park, and be front and center and really do some amazing things in less than a year of retraining. And for me as the announcer, to see horses that I've followed on the track, like Breeders' Cup Sprint champion Whitmore, I'm going to get to see him, and he's going to be doing something totally different than being an amazing sprinter.
Yeah, it really is something else to see how quickly a thoroughbred can develop off the racetrack. Natalie and I did this last year with Underscore, who some of you might know as Blueberry, was the subject of the Blueberry Bulletin on the Pollock Report website last year. And it's really something you can't appreciate until you've sort of gone through it yourself. And it's really cool to see. Now, Blueberry participated in the Dressage event, and that's where I want to start today, is going over Dressage. Natalie, if you could explain the event, and then Jonathan, we'll talk to you about the skill sets needed to succeed in Dressage.
Yeah, so a lot of the, if you were to walk around the horse park and you hadn't been to this event before, you're going to see a lot of horses sort of trotting and cantering in circles. And dressage is kind of known for being the thing where you're just sort of watching horses go in straight lines and circles and trying to figure out what's going on. So part of why we wanted to explain each of these was so that you'd have some context for what's going on. And dressage is kind of the one that's known for you're looking at something and you're not really sure what you're looking at if it's not something you've participated in. So dressage is often kind of equated to ballet dancing, where you're doing very exacting, specific, highly controlled movements with the horse that you have practiced over and over again and are trying to get them sort of down to a level of precision. When you're competing in dressage, you're given what's called a test. So you're given a prescribed series of movements. There will be a ring, a rectangular ring that has letters around it. And the test will tell you at A, you begin trotting, trot a 20-meter circle. At F, pick up a canter. And it'll have these very specific instructions. And so your goal is to sort of develop a horse that's listening, that's sensitive, and who's very, very precise so that you can follow those directions as precisely as you can. So I've sort of been learning about what that takes in the couple of seasons now that I've been working with my first real dressage horse. But Jonathan, what do you kind of see out there in terms of like what do horses need, off-track horses especially, need to succeed in that sport?
Well, first of all, being someone who's been inspired to learn how to ride from announcing the Thoroughbred Makeover to be in a position to say what it takes to be good at dressage, that might be the most elusive of the disciplines for me. And it takes years to fully develop. And it is amazing what the thoroughbreds can do in dressage in their first year of retraining. And what they're doing is they're taking the foundational gaits that they've learned on the track, walk, trot, canter, and then they're doing them to do the test like you prescribed, but also to kind of showcase how the horses can be rhythmic, to be controlled, to be straight, and that you're not just kind of cantering, but you're cantering in a way where you're engaging your hind end, you're being connected with the contact, you're working as a team with the rider, responding to the rider's aids. And it also goes full circle, actually. There's some race trainers that I've talked to who use dressage in their race training because it gets the horses to loosen up and to relax and to stretch. And so you're taking the gaits that you do on the track to kind of get you from, say, the starting gate to the finish line, or from the barn to the track to work out. And now you're showcasing the skill that can be done. And in the makeover, they even start to do some more advanced movements like the counter canter, where, you know, instead of going on the lead where they're focusing on the inside leg first, they're actually getting the horse to balance the other way. So dressage is really the foundation for all of the other disciplines that we're going to talk about.
So in that case, let's move on to another discipline, the show jumper event. Natalie, tell us a little bit about that one.
Yeah, so I did a very little bit of this with my horse before Blueberry. Show jumping is you have a course of jumps that has been set for you. You probably don't get to see it until right before you go in and do it. You need to get around in the proper order, and you're judged on, you're not judged by a judge so much as you're timed. The fastest horse who has the least amount, or ideally no amount, of rails knocked down will be the horse that wins. I'm not sure quite how they structure it in the makeover, but a lot of show jumping classes that I've seen before, you might do an initial course that might be 10 or 12 jumps, and then everybody who got around without knocking any rails will come back and do a second, smaller, much trickier course as the jump off, where you also want to go clean, but you want to go as fast as you can. So it's a lot of power and speed.
So whereas dressage may be more difficult to pick up as a spectator in terms of the nuances of what horse and rider are doing and the subtle cues that the rider gives the horse, in show jumping, it's pretty straightforward. If you walk up to say like, okay, you've done it well if you've gone over all of the jumps and you haven't knocked over any rails. But the real key is not necessarily going over the jump. It's how you ride between the jumps, how you set up the horse's rhythm, and how you set up the quality of their canter so that the horse is in a position to be able to take that jump from the right distance away from the jump. If you're too far away, you get a launcher. If you're too close, then the horse has to dig. So the real skill of the riders and the horses is to be able to actually ride between the fences. And then after that, the fences kind of take care of themselves. As my trainer, my wife, Ashley, who's been a makeover participant before, says, she goes, your job is between the fences. Once you're at the fence, that's the horse's job. And then you'll see kind of the rider get out of the way almost. You have to, actually kind of push back and let the horse kind of move underneath you and get out of their way. But the fence is the horse's job, and the real skill of the rider is to set them up to that fence.
So put them together, and then we have the eventing event. Natalie, tell us a bit about eventing and why that one is perhaps different than just doing one of the individual events that we previously mentioned.
Yeah, so eventing is 3 phases. You'd do a dressage test, you'd have a short show jumping round, and then you would have a course of jumps out in the field called cross country, where you're jumping much more natural obstacles, logs. you might have to go through water, that kind of thing. And eventing was originally sort of derived from the military tests that they used to put mounted cavalry horses through, because they wanted sort of to have each of the elements of those three pieces. They wanted a highly controlled horse, they wanted a brave horse, they wanted a quick horse, and that was sort of necessary for what they were doing. And so it's a three-part sort of thing, and you've got to be kind of good at several different things really to do well in that.
The thoroughbred breed is really skilled for eventing. The qualities of the thoroughbred in terms of their athleticism, their forward thinking, their brains, their eagerness to do whatever they're being asked, the complexity of eventing, having to do a dressage test and then having to go out on cross country and gallop at full speed and take these huge fences. I mean, when I walked around the Kentucky Horse Park for the first time, one of the jumps, I was like, no, that's not a jump. That's a picnic table. It's a little bit too big to be a picnic table. Yep. The horses do that. And the thoroughbreds are really built for eventing. And it truly is amazing to watch the skill set that's needed to do a good rhythmic dressage test, to be able to be balanced in a show jumping round, and then just to go out and see those thoroughbreds, former racehorses, with their ears forward, locking in on the jump and soaring over it. Eventing, I mean, I'm an eventer, and the way that these horses come off the track and take to eventing is amazing. I was announcing a big event in Montana at Rebecca Farm, and there was a war horse named Aiken Prep who had run, I think it was 62 times. And within 2 years, he had started eventing and moved up to the kind of the major leagues, the FEI levels. And he did that because of who he is as a thoroughbred. So while thoroughbreds can excel in a variety of sports, eventing is a very good one to showcase what the breed really represents.
So we've discussed the show jumper event. Now let's move on to show hunter. What is the show hunter event? How does that differ from show jumper?
So I did a little bit of the hunters when I was a kid, although I didn't show very much, so I sort of only have half the requirement here. But the show hunters are more about consistency, I would say. They're also going to jump a prescribed course. The jumps themselves are going to look a little different. They're going to be a little more natural looking with maybe some brush. They're going to be some sort of simpler colors, because they're sort of originally derived from the horse show version of you would take your fox hunter and you would fox hunt, and then you might take your fox hunter and go into the ring for part of the season and compete with your fox hunter. And so the show hunters kind of, I think, a long time ago now, evolved from the field hunters. And so the idea was show off how rhythmic your horse can be. Now the focus is very much on, getting an exact number of strides between two fences. If it's a 6 stride line, you want 6. You don't want 7. You don't want 5. You certainly don't want 5.5. You want something very specific and very easy looking. Everything should look very easy, and very often it's actually not.
So whereas with eventing, you can see those horses on cross country and they're, on the muscle and collecting back and then pushing forward. With show hunters, you don't want any of that. You want consistency the whole way around, almost as if you took the rider away from the horse and the horse just went around at a rhythmic pace. But that's hard to do, especially on a thoroughbred. So you do a lot to make it look like you've done nothing, but doing nothing brings out the beauty and the grace of the horse as well.
Mm-hmm. So you mentioned already the field hunter. How does the field hunting event compare to the how does the field hunter event compare to the show hunter event?
So the field hunters are more sort of connected to, I think, the origins of the show hunter, where they're more connected to fox hunting. And in the makeover context, that's sort of where you would be sending a horse that you expect is going to be a really great fox hunter. So they have them do kind of a prescribed course, but it's not in the arena. It's out on a cross-country course, I believe. But in that case, you're not necessarily being judged for speed the way that you would be in a cross-country setting. You're sort of being judged kind of in a combination between cross-country and show hunters, where they want to know how the horse is getting over the obstacles. The horse also has to be used to hounds. If you were to actually ride in a fox hunt, they don't in very many places, they don't actually hunt foxes anymore, but they still do have hounds. And so the horse has to be kind of used to working with all of that as well. And that's part of what they would be tested on at the makeover as a field hunter prospect.
Now, at the makeover, horses can do 1 or 2 disciplines, and you do see some crossover, and there is a natural crossover between the field hunters and the eventers. And with the field hunters, they are doing some cross-country obstacles, but doing it in kind of a more huntery, rhythmic type of way. And there's also kind of a functional aspect to the field hunter tests, because you may be asked to open a gate, on horseback. You may be asked to come up to a fence and take the top rail and drop it down. So you're not just showcasing the athleticism of the horse, but you're also showcasing the functionality of the horse, because being out on a fox hunt, it's a very real thing to the people that do it. And you need a horse that is able not only to do the things athletically, but also to do what they're asked functionally as well.
Since 2008, the Pollock Report has provided hard-hitting, award-winning independent journalism in the thoroughbred racing realm. Now you can partner with us to make it even better as a Pollock Report insider. We've launched a reader support program on Patreon where, for a small monthly subscription, you get access to exclusive content from Pollock Report staff and help us produce more and better stories. Now, before you get out your pitchforks, let's get one thing clear. This is not a paywall. The quality and quantity of stories you see on the Pollock Report website will be the same as it's ever been. But if you want to help better shine a light in areas of horse racing that need exposure to help the sport survive and prosper, this is an easy way to do it, and there's plenty in it for you. For $5 a month, you can get access to exclusive Q&As with Pollock Report staff. Is there a factoid you've been trying to find? Want to know our opinion on something? This is the level for you. For $9 a month, you get a peek behind the curtain at the Pollock Report. We'll discuss the nuts and bolts of our editorial process, share on-the-scene insight when we're reporting on location, and introduce some Patreon exclusive segments. Or you can become a VIP Pollock Report insider at $20 a month. You'll get all of the above along with Pollock Report merch and handicapping insights from our team. Do you want to know who Ray likes this weekend? Become a VIP. And hey, if you missed the comment section, we're bringing it back for Pollock Report Insiders on Patreon. Become a Pollock Report Insider at patreon.com/Pollock Report, a simple way to support independent horse industry journalism. So we've talked about a lot of English-based disciplines so far. Let's move on to some of the more Western-based disciplines that are on the makeover menu for this year. Let's start with barrel racing. That one seems pretty self-explanatory, but tell us a little bit, for people who aren't familiar with barrel racing, what's going on here?
So I've never done this. I've watched it a little bit, but there's a trio of barrels, and your goal is to get around them as quickly as you can, not knock them over. That sounds like that should be really easy, but you have to sort of completely circle each barrel. So you're kind of racing at it, doing a super tight turn, and then racing to the next one and doing a super tight turn. I think that at Makeover, they also have a separate, you don't just run around the 3 barrels, although that is part of your score. I think they also have a separate piece where they have you do like a ridden, I think it's sort of like a test. Jonathan, correct me if I'm wrong, but they're trying to make sure that you also sort of have 3 gaits and some basic sort of horsemanship, in addition to just running the barrels, that you can do some slightly slower and more basic things in addition to running the barrels. But as a sport, generally barrel racing is barrel racing. You run around the barrels as fast as you can and spend a lot of time trying to figure out how to balance your horse, to stretch your horse, to figure out how to just shave any few seconds you can, or hundredths of seconds or tenths of seconds off of your time.
There is a pattern component, like you said, in several of the disciplines. When they're at the makeover, they will look and be judged a little bit differently than if they were, say, at a traditional horse show, because that accounts for the fact that really wanting to emphasize putting on a good foundation for these horses when they come off the track. So for jumping, for example, it's not just simply like jump, go jump it. It's all right. The skill set that you need in order to have your horse be rhythmic, balanced, straight, that you test those, not just by going over the jump, by doing the patterns as well, like you see in barrel racing. Now, the racing part of it, that's natural to the thoroughbreds. They get the idea that you're supposed to go fast, but you're going fast in a different way. Usually on the track, say 1 mile oval, you'll get a quarter of a mile to kind of get your rhythm and go straight. Here, the turns come up very quickly. So the muscles that the horses use kind of to turn on their hind end, not just go left-handed, but in the pattern, they got to go left-handed and right-handed as well. So they're using the natural speed that they have, but they're doing it in a much more confined setting. And it's a sport that does take some time to develop. And I do like at the makeover, you see the range of, yes, the horse may not necessarily be ready to go all out. So the rider takes the moment to kind of go through the pattern in a little bit more of a controlled way. And that should be celebrated just as much, given that this is a retraining program. Horses are new to this sport, as the one who kind of is proficient at it and can head out and quickly circle around the barrels. So you see at barrel racing where the horses are in their retraining. And that's an important thing to remember, is that the makeover, while being an amazing destination event, it's kind of the first step towards a whole world of what these horses will do after they come off the racetrack.
Definitely. So sticking to the Western disciplines, let's talk about ranch work. What are we doing in ranch work?
So to my understanding, the ranch work discipline is sort of similar to the field hunters in that we're testing you for the skills that you would need to succeed sort of out there in an uncontrolled environment or less controlled environment. A horse who's a working ranch horse is out on the ranch working cows. You're going to have to go over lots of different terrain. You might have to go through gates. You're going to have to probably herd cows. Anything that you might have to do in terms of manipulating the horse to move up next to something that you might have to reach out to a fence or to a gate or something like that. They're trying to sort of create ways to test the horse's ability to roll with what you might find in a ranch setting, similar to the way the field hunters are trying to test your horse's ability to roll with whatever they might come up on if they're sort of out in open country. So I think in the makeover, they have them work cows. I know as part of the finale, I think they do that in the preliminary as well. Jonathan, is that right?
It's for the finale. So okay. The facilities that the trainers may have, some may be able to work with cows in their training, some may not be able to, but like you said, the preliminaries, let's test the horse's foundation. And there are a number of ranches out there that specifically get horses off the track to actually use them on the ranch. So the ones that then make the finals, then all right, let's put them to work and sort the cows. And you don't see too many cattle on the racetrack. So it's interesting to see how the horses react to it. And it's amazing how thoroughbreds communicate in terms of the energy they give off and their eyes and their ears. And in the finale, you'll see some horses that are like, what is this? What are we supposed to do? Okay, tell me what to do. I'll do it. And then you see some that, particularly maybe the mares, who kind of pin their ears back on those cattle and, all right, you're going this way, you're going this way. And that's the discipline that's at the very end of a long day at the finale, but it's also one that gets the loudest cheers, because it is pretty amazing to see these former racehorses be able to go in a pen with cattle and just kind of show that they're boss.
So a lot of these events so far have been testing a horse's obedience, their discipline, their constitution, their ability to handle stress and outside stimuli. And that all kind of comes together in the next event that I want to talk about, competitive trail. Natalie, can you give us a rundown on competitive trail?
So I really want to do this with Blueberry at some point. I haven't figured out quite when I'll find the time to train him for it. But competitive trail in this kind of context is really sort of trying to recreate obstacles that you might see if you were a full-time trail rider. So if you were going out into a state park or something like that, you wouldn't just be riding through grass fields and that'd be it. You might have to go over bridges. You might have to sort of manipulate your way through kind of a narrow trail that might have some like tree trunks and stuff growing around. You'd certainly have to open and close gates. So competitive trail is trying to, again, sort of mimic a lot of those obstacles that you might come up on that you might not be expecting, and try to test the horse's ability to sort of deal with that in terms of how precisely they can move their bodies, but also in terms of, how bomb-proof are they? So that's kind of an interesting one to watch from that perspective, because there are some horses who care about nothing and will do kind of whatever. And then there are some who are very sensitive and they do very well with the kind of like very specific body motion types of elements. And then they see a flag. I think for part of it, you have to carry a flag, and that's kind of visually upsetting. It's moving around, it's making a lot of noise. It doesn't really look like anything they're used to seeing. And some of them, that's just kind of it. So trail is interesting because they're, again, sort of similarly to the ranch work and the field hunter, they're trying to recreate either specific obstacles or obstacles that require you to demonstrate skills you might need if you were just sort of out riding around someplace that was unfamiliar to you.
One of the things about the horse's background on the racetrack is they do get exposed to a lot of stimuli, crowds, being handled by all kinds of different people, trailering to different settings. One thing that I've come to learn about thoroughbreds, they're a very observant breed. They're a very intense breed. The intensity is both a good thing in terms of, when they're out jumping, they're intensely jumping. But when they're maybe scared or bothered by something, they're intense in their reaction too. And also one of the things is that one of the most jarring things for a hot-blooded horse, as thoroughbreds are classified, is just changing up a little bit to what they're used to. And so competitive trail is actually one of the more difficult disciplines. It's at a pace that, you're just mostly walking through, maybe doing some trot or some kind of controlled canter. But, when you pull out the flag, or when you have to go through the kind of streamers, or, step up on a box or go through water, you're testing more the horse's mental ability to process, all right, I'm giving you something a little bit different. How are you going to handle it? And some of them handle it in an intensely positive way. They're like, put my head down. Yes, we're going. And then some of them are like, I don't know what to do about that. So you do get the whole range of performances in competitive trail because it really tests the horse's mental acuity to adapt to all kinds of different stimuli.
An obstacle course for both the body and the mind. So let's take a look at the next event. The next event is Polo. I'm sure a lot of people have seen this played, but give us kind of the ground rules of Polo, or as quickly as you can, and how that is applied in the makeover context in particular.
So what I do understand of Polo is a little bit limited, but obviously if you've ever seen Pretty Woman, the idea is you've got two different teams riding polo horses. They've got the mallet.
You're just going to gloss over that one?
I mean, I've watched...
Throw it out there, Natalie.
I mean, that's what most people have probably seen. I've watched a couple of actual polo matches, but probably most of what you all are likely to know is just that. And you probably got the basics from that. I mean, there's two different teams. They're mounted on horses. They've got mallets. They're trying to hit a ball that's on the ground. You're trying to get it to, particular goals on either end of the field. There's rules about not crossing over into the path of somebody else. So you can't just play bumper cars with your polo horses, although they do certainly jostle quite a bit, but you can't just sort of cut somebody off and wipe them off the field. So there's a little bit of technicality to it. It's a lot of, when you're playing an actual polo game, it's a lot of quick movement, tight turns, spinning around, going the other direction. It's very, very intense. And I think, in fact, so much so that a lot of polo teams have kind of multiple sets of horses, and they'll change out horses through the game, because even sort of a short play period is very intense for the horse and the rider. So in Makeover, I think they're looking to test a lot of those early skills. And I think they do play a mock game, but they have a separate pattern as well, I think, just to test the basics of how prepared is that horse to go quickly, to turn quickly, to follow the ball. The horse kind of learns to follow the ball somewhat on its own. How used are they to having the mallet swinging around them? That sort of basic desensitization, but also understanding what their goal is.
For polo, at the makeover, they're also testing those foundational skills, and Polo combines a lot of the skill sets that we talked about for some of the other sports, dressage movements, for example. There's an element of, ranch work being around the other horses. There's also a certain type in terms of what people who play polo look for in their polo ponies. Usually smaller horses, usually younger horses, because it does take a lot of time to train those horses, and also liking mares because of the intensity that they bring. And there's been a former polo overall thoroughbred makeover champion. Polo, it's also very spectator friendly when they're in the finale and doing the chucker. And I mean, just to think for these horses that are so used to running on the track, now they got horses coming at them one way. The rider's got a stick. There's a ball to chase after. So there's a lot that goes into polo, and it is pretty amazing to see how quickly the former racehorses can pick up this new complicated sport.
So the final event we're going to discuss here is one that's impossible to categorize, and that's kind of the entire point of it. Let's talk about freestyle.
Yeah, so in the purposes of the makeover, freestyle is kind of the catch-all for everything else. I think that a lot of it is sort of designed to catch the people who want to do liberty work with horses, which is becoming a more popular competitive thing. That sort of is focused on having a horse that's not ridden necessarily, or they may be ridden very often bridleless, maybe or maybe not bareback. Liberty work is kind of teaching the horse to take certain cues and to be very connected to the handler, even when the handler is not physically touching them or super near to them. So you might have a loose horse that's being cued from the other side of the ring to canter in a circle, to stop, to rear, to change directions, that sort of thing. This is sort of designed to catch people who want to do that, but it's also kind of a catch-all for people who want to do things that don't fit easily into one of the other sports. I've seen people driving carts in freestyle, which is kind of cool. I've seen people sort of combine a couple of different sports within their freestyle routine. They kind of have a prescribed amount of time, and they can do whatever they want within that time, as long as they show the horse going, I think, trot and canter in both directions. I think they have to do a serpentine. But other than that, they can have the horse doing whatever. So people very often come in with costumes. They have like musical programs that they're doing. There's a lot of props. I've seen people come in minion costumes, like the giant poofy sort of things, just to show that the horse won't react to that. And so it's a little bit of a free-for-all. It's really fascinating to see how creative people can be with that.
From the first discipline, we talked about dressage, where the movements are very prescribed. The expectations are very well laid out and understood. Freestyle is an anything goes, and it's designed to sort of showcase, all right, what do you got for me? And what these thoroughbreds have is the whole range, bareback, bridleless, mounted, unmounted, liberty, kids, adults, big groups, the harmony between one horse and one rider. It's the discipline that I also think is the toughest to judge, because you're seeing such a range. And one of the things that, I like about the makeover, and hope that people, when they see the makeover, can appreciate these horses. They still are race horses. They didn't necessarily lose their identity of who they are after they came off the track. So in terms of the freestyle routines that I like the best, they're the ones that kind of work with what these horses are: elite level athletes, highly intelligent. And now let's take all those amazing skills and let's showcase them in a different way. And so it's one of the more crowd pleasing disciplines, and it's a tremendous way to showcase these horses that we've seen on the track, what we never thought that they could do. My wife, Ashley, she did freestyle. She was in the top 10 back in 2017. And then her freestyle horse became the first horse that I ever had that I evented on. And with Grand Mooney, the horse could bow, the horse could square up to the mounting block. Ashley could stand on her back and wave a blazer around, and then also could be ridden in bridleless, bareback. And so freestyle, it's the catch-all, but it's also here is everything that is under the sun that these horses can do.
Well, this has been very educational. If you've been following along and any of these events interest you, the Thoroughbred Makeover takes place October 12th through 15th at the Kentucky Horse Park in Lexington, Kentucky. Jonathan, thank you so much for being on with us today. We can catch you with your monthly column, Horowitz on OTTBs, that recently came out, I think, just a couple days ago. Want to give people a little feedback on what the latest column is?
So I wrote a column about Samantha Fawcett, who's a hunter jumper, also rides dressage in Ontario, Canada. And she's done the makeover. In fact, she won the show jumper discipline at the makeover last year with Canton Comet. The makeover has brought racehorses into a lot of people's lives. But what Samantha is doing, what my wife Ashley's doing, what I'm doing, we're going from the makeover into racehorses' lives. So Samantha decided that she would breed a horse that would ultimately become a show jumper, but first she's going to race that horse. So I really like that. Not only does the makeover do a great job of spotlighting horses from racing to what their next career or careers will be, but it's also inspiring some people to get back into racing, and it's coming, or even get into racing for the first time. And it's come full circle with Samantha Fawcett. So I'm interested to see how her foal does. And I think if all goes well, she may very well be running the offspring in the Breeders' Stakes, because she's in Ontario, Canada, and she'll have an Ontario bred.
Now that's how we do a good advertiser tie-in. Don't forget, this Saturday is the Breeders' Stakes at Woodbine. $500,000, a mile and a half on turf. Good horses in this one. Prince of Wales Stakes winner Duke of Love. Queen's Plate second and third place finishers Hall of Dreams and Sir for Sure. Thanks for watching this episode of The Friday Show. If you have a moment, be sure to leave a like on YouTube, subscribe, share, tell your friends all about it. We love to hear from you. And we will see you next time on The Friday Show.